Well, how we doing, folks? If you're watching this video, it's obviously past your curfew. No, just joking. Well, today just happened to be Wednesday, which is October 15th, 2025. Today's daily Bible text was based on Revelation chapter 1, verse 8, which read and said and read and stated this: I am the Alpha and the Omega. I repeat, I am the Alpha and the Omega. This is what was said by Jehovah God. He is the Alpha and the Omega. What does this mean exactly? First and foremost, before we dive in, we have to understand what is Alpha and Omega. What does that mean? Also, where's the background of that? Where does that stem from? So with that being said, Alpha and Omega is a term that was actually brought to us by the Greek language context. The word alpha in the Greek context will be similar to the letter A in the American English context. Now, what do I mean by that? Just as the letter A is the first letter we pronounce in the alphabet, A, or the first letter as we all, what our eyes view or ears hear and recognize as to be the first, letters or first summed up letter or whatever that represents the whole alphabet, A, just as we might use terms A to Z, meaning beginning to end, or in other words, opening and closing. I say that to say this. So it's the same with the word alpha in the Greek context or language context. The word alpha will be summed or equivalent to the letter A in the English American context. So hopefully this is not you losing me here. This is being too much on your membrane or your brain. In other words, basically what I'm saying is alpha and the letter A is similar or equal to. The letter A and the word alpha is both the same, in other words, but in different language contexts. So in English or American, language context, we understand A is the beginning or the first letter that represents the whole entire alphabet. Like I was saying before, A to Z. When you hear that, that's from beginning to end. So it's the same when it comes to Alpha and Omega in the Greek context. It's beginning to end. A meaning alpha, find that funny. The letter A, which is the first letter in the English American context, as well as alpha is the first word, in the Greek context. Just as the letter Z is the last letter to represent the English American context. Once again, what I say from A to Z, or if you ever see people say A to Z, that's beginning to end. Beginning to end, opening to closing. So it's the same when it comes to the Greek term context. Alpha and Omega, beginning to end. Alpha standing for, the beginning, and Omega representing the end. Hopefully that wasn't too much for you. I wasn't losing you. But we could look at the Bible though too. Now, what do I mean by that? Let's look at the Bible and break down the Bible. So, if I recollect, it's 66 books that that make up the Bible, right? 66 books from Genesis, Exodus, all the way to Revelations is the closing. So 66 books in all that make up the Bible. Don't ask me how many pages exact. I gotta get into that later. But long story short, we understand that also out of these 66 books is the Old Testament and the New Testament. Now, I went over this prior to me making this video. I had to make sure before I put it out there. But the original or the Old Testament is made up of the Hebrew. Hebrew, remember, is the original language, Jehovah's language that he used. Israelites, the the Jews. The first language, Hebrew. This is why most Hebrews are Jews. They use that language. So Hebrew and Aramaic. So Hebrews and Aramaic make up the Old or Original Testament. People from the first generation Christians, so forth, perhaps use that, the Old Testament. They use that context. Now you have the new, the more up-to-date version, which will represent the new context. Remember the Old Testament and the New Testament. So the new would be more the Greek, which we just broke down Alpha and Omega. So that represents the New Testament. That actually stems from Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John. Once you get up to Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, you could keep that in your membrane or in your memory. That's basically now you into the New Testament all the way to Revelations, the end. So when I say New Testament, meaning from the days, maybe you got BC, before Christ, AD, after his death. So before Christ, the Old Testaments, and then after his death, the New Testaments. So 66 books make up the Bible. Broken down from Old Testament, which was made in the original Hebrew. Remember the Jews, the Israelites, that's the language they originally spoke, Hebrew and Aramaic. Then the New Testament, stemming from Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, on forward to Revelations, the closing of the book. So, which is the New Testament, from Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John. But could we sum that up also to Alpha and Omega, the beginning to end? Old Testament stemming from the beginning, or Genesis, which is the Old Testament, the Alpha, and then closing or finish, the Omega. Just thought of that when you get to the New Testament. But long story short, what is the main goal of this? So I break down Alpha and Omega. This is what was said by Jehovah. Because we all know no one birthed Jehovah. No one gave Jehovah or put Jehovah in this world like how we came from the womb of our mothers. 9 months carried on, and then, the world we enter. But we all born from somebody. We all come from somebody. So we have a beginning stemming from our mother, our great-grandmothers, our ancestors. We see the root on down. Just if you go all the way back to Adam and Eve. But the thing is, we were all made. Even Adam and Eve was made from Jehovah. But Jehovah God, was he made? Was he born? Far as we know, Jehovah always was. So with that being said, this is why he include himself or sum himself up as the Alpha and the Omega. Because the beginning starts with him. And the finish will end or, stem from him as well. Jehovah always was and always will be. In fact, I think the scripture mentions that. Jehovah always was and always will be. Let's read it. Let's go to Revelation chapter 1, verse 8. You see I have here the Bible. You see it's still closed, so we're going to open it up to Revelation chapter 1, verse 8, and we're going to read what it says. Now remember, no one birthed Jehovah. He always was here, always was, and always will be. There's no ending of Jehovah. He would never die, unlike human beings. See, we have a due date. But also, we have a time also, right, when we would experience everlasting life. Jehovah promises that. So this is how we know for a fact it will happen. Because we know Jehovah's word is good. You know how somebody said, my word is my bond. But you can't really hold people up to that, right? Because some people, they don't really keep their word. But with that being said, Jehovah's word is way beyond whatever he's saying. As we look into the Bible, we read it. We know his prophecies has came into actual real life, right? Real lifetime. So just as Titus chapter 1 verse 2, like I always mention, which I learned from my good brother Yuri Brunt, how Jehovah cannot lie. It's the same. So if he cannot lie, so we know for a fact. In other words, what's the opposite of a lie? So he's the truth. Whatever Jehovah says is facts. Factual. So whatever he say, you could bet your bottom dollar. You could bet it. It's going to happen. So with that being said, this is what it says on Revelation chapter 1 verse 8. Jehovah always was and always will be. Just as he promised us that we will soon be like Jehovah. Always will. And always, will be. Everlasting life. But this is what it says on Revelation chapter 1 verse 8. So if you look on it. See, Revelation chapter 1. I'm not sure if you can see. It might not come in clear. For some reason, my phone is real greasy. I don't know why, but it is what it is. I'm sure to clear up eventually over time. It happens. But it states this on Revelation chapter 1, verse 8. It says, I am the Alpha and the Omega, says Jehovah God. The one who is, and who was, and who is coming, the Almighty. Pay attention to it, what he said. Revelation chapter 1, verse 8. This is what he says from the one and only best Bible you can ever choose. Big up to that King James. No, shoot that King James down. This is the New World Translation. This is highly selected and suggested by the Jehovah's Witnesses all over. And this is what it says. It says, I am the Alpha and the Omega, says Jehovah God. The one who is, pay attention, and who was. So the one who is currently and who was past tense. And it states this. And who is coming, the Almighty. So the one who is currently, the one who was past tense, and the one soon to be. This is the prophecy that you can look forward to. So yes, this is written from Jehovah God himself. Very powerful text, like I said. And in the scriptures, it breaks down that. It breaks down where did it come from, the Greek. It's a Greek language term, Alpha and Omega. And it mentioned also in the scripture, it mentioned also how this is what Jehovah says. But we could look at this. I believe in the Bible mentioned when Jehovah did come, Armageddon. We could look how you will see Jehovah, what he says, coming to fruition. That we all will be promised an everlasting life. And of course, when he get rid of all the unrighteous and leave only the righteous here, you will see what Jehovah mean, But let's read what it says for today's daily Bible text. Might have lost my train. But today being October 15, 2025. This is what it says. It says, the letter Alpha begins the Greek alphabet. And the letter Omega concludes it. By using the description, the Alpha and the Omega, Jehovah indicates that when he starts something,